What if the person you were becoming your best self for was secretly planning to leave you the entire time? I met Marcus on a rainy Tuesday in October when we were both 23 years old. He was standing outside a coffee shop, trying to shield his laptop bag from the downpour with a newspaper that was already falling apart. I had an umbrella. He had that smile that made you feel like you were the only person in the world. 3 months later, he moved into my apartment. 6 months after that, I couldn't imagine my life without him. Marcus worked as a graphic designer at a mid-sized marketing firm downtown. He was talented, the kind of person who could see beauty in things other people overlook. He'd photograph rusted fire escapes and crumbling brick walls, then turn them into art that made you reconsider everything you thought you knew about the city. But his real dream, the one he talked about late at night when we were lying in bed with the windows open and the sound of traffic humming below us, was Paris. He'd never been to Europe. His family didn't have money for that kind of thing growing up, and by the time he was making his own living, there was always something else. Student loans, car repairs, the security deposit on our apartment. But Paris remained this glowing dream on his horizon. He had a Pinterest board with hundreds of images. The Musée d'Orsay, small cafes in the Marais, with tables spilling onto cobblestone streets. The Shakespeare and Company bookstore. The Eiffel Tower at sunset, though he'd always add that he knew it was touristy, but he didn't care. The problem was his French. He'd taken 2 years in high school and remembered approximately 6 words. Bonjour, merci, croissant, which he pronounced with an exaggerated American accent that made me laugh every time. He tried Duolingo once, made it through 3 lessons, then got frustrated and deleted the app. Languages weren't his thing, he said. He was a visual person, not a verbal one. We'd been together for 3 years when the idea first occurred to me. We were watching a movie, some romantic comedy set in Paris, and Marcus was doing what he always did during these movies. He'd lean forward, completely absorbed, pointing out architectural details and the way the light hit the buildings. Someday, he said like he always did, someday we'll go there together. And I thought, why not make someday happen? Why not surprise him? The more I thought about it, the more perfect it seemed. Our 5th anniversary was coming up in 2 years. That would give me time to save money and, more importantly, to learn French. Not just tourist French, real French, fluent French. I imagined the moment I'd reveal it to him. We'd be at dinner, maybe that nice Italian place he loved, and I'd just start speaking French. His face would go through this progression of confusion, then shock, then pure joy. And then I'd pull out the plane tickets. It would be the surprise of a lifetime. I started researching immediately. I found Madame Rousseau through a community center listing. She was 72 years old, originally from Marseille, and she'd been teaching French to Americans for 40 years. Her reviews were intimidating, demanding, but effective. Not for the faint of heart. She made me cry twice, but I'm fluent now. Perfect. Her apartment was across town, a 40-minute drive through traffic. She lived on the 3rd floor of a building that smelled like old wood and someone's dinner cooking. The first time I knocked on her door, I almost turned around and left. But then she opened it. This tiny woman with silver hair, pulled back in a bun and eyes that seemed to look straight through you. "You are Sarah?" she asked, her accent thick but her English perfect. "Yes, Madame Rousseau. Thank you for agreeing to meet with me." She looked me up and down. "You want to learn French for your boyfriend?" "Yes." "This is what you said on the phone." "Yes." "I want to surprise him. He's always dreamed of going to Paris." She made a sound that might have been approval or skepticism. I couldn't tell. "Combien? We will see if you are serious." That first lesson lasted 2 hours and left me exhausted. Madame Rousseau didn't believe in easing into things. She spoke to me entirely in French from the moment I sat down, ignoring my confused looks and stumbling attempts to respond. When I tried to answer in English, she'd hold up one finger and say, "In français, s'il vous plaît," over and over until I wanted to scream. But something about her intensity hooked me. By the end of that first session, I could introduce myself, ask basic questions, and count to 20. It wasn't much, but it was a start. I told Marcus I was taking yoga classes. Tuesday and Thursday evenings, I said. I even bought a yoga mat and left it conspicuously by the door. He was supportive the way he always was. "That's great, babe," he said, kissing my forehead. "You've been stressed lately. This will be good for you." The guilt of lying to him gnawed at me sometimes, especially in the beginning. But I reminded myself it was for a good reason. It was a gift. The best gift I could possibly give him. Madame Rousseau was relentless. She corrected my pronunciation like a drill sergeant, making me repeat words until my tongue ached. "Non," she'd say, shaking her head. "The R comes from here," and she'd tap her throat. "Not from here," tapping her mouth. Again, she assigned homework, vocabulary lists, grammar exercices, reading assignments from French novels that were way above my level. I'd stay up after Marcus fell asleep, sitting at the kitchen table with my textbooks spread out, whispering conjugations so I wouldn't wake him. Je suis. tu es, il est, nous sommes, vous êtes, ils sont. J'ai, tu as, il a, nous avons, vous avez, ils ont. The verbs became a rhythm in my head, a constant background music to my life. I practiced everywhere. While cooking dinner, I'd narrate what I was doing in French. Je coupe les oignons. Je fais chauffer l'huile. While driving to work, I'd listen to French podcasts, trying to catch words I recognized. While Marcus watched TV in the evening, I'd sit next to him with my phone, scrolling through French news sites and social media, absorbing the language. After 6 months, something clicked. I was reading a children's book Madame Rousseau had assigned, and suddenly I realized I wasn't translating anymore. I was just understanding. The words made sense in French, not as English words in disguise. I almost cried. You are doing well, Madame Rousseau said during our next lesson, which from her was like winning an Olympic medal. But you're still thinking too much. You must let the language flow. French is not about precision. It is about feeling. She started assigning me films. Amélie, La Haine, The 400 Blows. I'd watch them late at night with headphones on, Marcus asleep in the next room, and I'd fall into these stories about lives so different from mine. I started to understand what Madame Rousseau meant about feeling. French wasn't just words. It was a way of seeing the world. Around a 1-year mark, I started dreaming in French. Not every night, but sometimes. I'd wake up with French phrases on my lips, and it would take me a moment to remember where I was. Marcus noticed once. You were talking in your sleep? He said, amused. My heart stopped. What did I say? I don't know. It wasn't English. Maybe you were dreaming about your yoga instructor. He laughed. Maybe she's teaching you meditation mantras or something. I laughed too, but my hands were shaking as I poured my coffee. The line got harder as I got better at French. Not because I wanted to tell him exactly, but because the language was becoming part of me. I wanted to share it with him. When we'd watch movies and a character would speak French, I'd understand what they were saying before the subtitles appeared, and I'd have to pretend I didn't. When we'd go to restaurants and there'd be French on the menu, I'd have to act like I was guessing, even though I knew exactly what coco vin and bouillabaisse meant. But I kept the secret. For him, for the surprise. I opened a separate bank account for the Paris fund. Every paycheck, I'd transfer $100. Sometimes more if I'd picked up extra work. I'd check the balance obsessively, watching it grow. $500, $1,000, $1,500. The plane tickets alone would cost about $1,200 for both of us. Then there was the hotel, food, activities. I wanted to do it right. I wanted to give him a week in Paris that he'd remember forever. I started planning the trip in detail. I researched hotels in the Marais, the neighborhood Marcus always talked about. I made lists of museums and cafes and bookstores. I imagined us walking along the Seine at night, the lights reflecting on the water. I imagined surprising him by speaking French to waiters, to shopkeepers, to strangers asking for directions. I imagined the look on his face. Madame Rousseau asked me once, about 18 months into my lessons, why I was working so hard. We just finished a particularly brutal session on the subjunctive mood, and I was exhausted. It is not just for the surprise, is it? She asked, pouring me tea. You love the language now. I thought about it. She was right. Somewhere along the way, French had stopped being just a means to an end. It had become something I did for myself. The way the words felt in my mouth. The way French poetry sounded. The way I could read Camus in the original and understand the rhythms he intended. Yes, I admitted. I love it. She nodded, satisfied. Good. You should do things for yourself, not just for other people. Remember that. I should have listened to her more carefully. By the 2-year mark, I was fluent. Not perfect, but fluent. I could have full conversations with Madame Rousseau about politics, art, philosophy. I could read French novels without a dictionary. I could think in French when I wanted to. And I had $3,000 saved in the Paris account. Our 5th anniversary was 3 weeks away. I'd made reservations at Marcus's favorite restaurant. I'd ordered the plane tickets, printed them out, put them in a special envelope. I'd planned exactly how I'd do it. We'd sit down, order drinks, and then I'd start speaking French to the waiter. Just casual, like it was the most natural thing in the world. And then I'd watch Marcus's face as he realized what was happening. I was so excited I could barely sleep. This was it. The culmination of 2 years of work, 2 years of secrets, 2 years of becoming someone new. For him, for us. 3 weeks before our anniversary, Marcus came home early from work. I was in the kitchen, making dinner and humming along to a French song I'd been learning. I didn't hear him come in at first. Sarah, we need to talk. The tone of his voice made my stomach drop. I turned around. He was standing in the doorway, still wearing his jacket, his hands in his pockets. He looked uncomfortable, guilty. Okay, I said slowly, turning off the stove. What's wrong? He wouldn't meet my eyes. He kept looking at his hands, at the floor, at the wall behind me. Anywhere but at me. This isn't easy, he started, and I already knew. Somehow, I already knew. I've been doing a lot of thinking lately. About us. About where we're going. Marcus, what are you saying? He finally looked at me, and I saw it in his face. The decision was already made. This wasn't a conversation. This was a speech. I think I need some space to figure things out. Figure out what I want. Space. The word felt hollow in my mouth. What does that mean? I think I need to move out for a while. Just temporarily. Just to clear my head. He was fumbling with his wedding ring, twisting it around his finger. We weren't married, but he bought us matching rings on our 3rd anniversary. A promise, he'd said, until we're ready for the real thing. Is there someone else? I asked, even though I didn't want to know the answer. No, he said too quickly. No, this isn't about anyone else. This is about me. About us. Things have felt different lately, haven't they? Like we're just going through the motions. I thought about the last 2 years. About all the times I'd left for yoga class. About all the nights I'd stayed up late studying while he slept. About how I'd been building this surprise, this gift, this entire secret life. Had we been growing apart? Or had I been so focused on the surprise that I'd missed what was happening right in front of me? I don't think we've been going through the motions, I said quietly. I think we've been building a life together. I know, he said, and he sounded genuinely sad. I know you think that, but I just need time. Please try to understand. The speech sounded rehearsed, like he'd practiced it in his car on the way home. Like he'd been planning this for a while. When? I asked, when what? When did you decide this? When did you start feeling like we were just going through the motions? He hesitated. I don't know. A few months, maybe. A few months. While I was perfecting my accent. While I was saving money. While I was planning the surprise of his lifetime. I'll pack some things tonight, he said. Stay with a friend for a bit. We can figure out the apartment and everything else later. He moved out the next morning. I watched him pack his clothes, his laptop, his camera equipment. He took the French press we'd bought together at a flea market. He took the painting that hung above our couch. He took pieces of our life and fit them into boxes and bags. And then he was gone. I sat in the empty apartment for a long time after he left. The plane tickets were in my desk drawer. The envelope with poor Marcus written on it in my best handwriting. I thought about ripping them up, burning them, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. A week later, my friend Jessica called me. I don't know if I should tell you this, she started, which meant she absolutely was going to tell me. What? I saw Marcus last night at O'Brien's. O'Brien's was a bar downtown. We used to go there sometimes after work. Okay, I said. He was with someone. A woman. Stephanie, I think, from his office. Stephanie. I knew who she was. Blonde. Younger than me. She'd come to the company holiday party last year. Marcus had introduced us. This is Stephanie. She just started in our department. She'd seemed nice. Friendly. They looked pretty comfortable together. Jessica continued gently. Like it wasn't their first time out. I am sorry, Sara. I thought you should know. After I hung up, I just sat there, and suddenly everything made sense. The way he'd been distant the last few months. The way he'd been coming home late from work. The way he'd been so quick to believe I was at yoga class. Never asking questions. Never wanting to come with me. He'd been planning to leave. Maybe not the whole 2 years I'd been learning French, but for a while. Long enough to have someone else lined up. Long enough to practice his breakup speech. Long enough to make sure he had a soft place to land. While I was learning French to surprise him, he was planning to surprise me by leaving. The irony was almost funny. Almost. I called Madame Rousseau. I don't know why. Maybe because she was the only person who knew about the French, about the plan, about any of it. It is over, she asked when I told her. Yes. And the trip? I don't know. I have the tickets, the money, but I can't go alone. There was a pause. Then she said something I didn't expect. Why not? What? Why can you not go alone? You speak French. You know the city from all your research. Why do you need him to go to Paris? Because it was for him. The whole thing was for him. No, she said firmly. The French was for you. You loved learning it. I saw it. The trip can also be for you. I couldn't imagine it. Going to Paris alone. Using the tickets I'd bought for us. Walking through the city, I'd imagined us exploring together. But over the next few days, the idea started to take root. I'd spent 2 years becoming someone new. Someone who spoke French. Someone who was brave enough to pursue something difficult. Someone who could dream in another language. Why should I throw that away because Marcus was an asshole? I started looking at the plane tickets differently. Not as a gift for him, but as a gift for myself. I'd earned them. I'd saved the money. I'd put in the work. 2 months after Marcus left, I was scrolling through job listings online. I don't know what I was looking for exactly. Just something to distract myself. And then I saw it. International School of Lion. French/English teacher. Bilingual required. I read the listing 3 times. They wanted someone who could teach English to French students and help with their French language program. The salary was decent. Housing was included. The position started in 2 months. I applied before I could talk myself out of it. The interview was conducted entirely in French. They wanted to test my fluency, they said. I talked about my teaching philosophy, my experience, my love of the language. I told them about Madame Rousseau, about learning French as an adult, about how it had changed the way I saw the world. They offered me the job 3 days later. I called Madame Rousseau first. I got it, I said. The teaching job in Lyon. I could hear the smile in her voice. Of course you did. You were ready. I'm terrified. Good. That means it matters. I gave notice at my job. I broke my lease. I sold most of my furniture. It was amazing how little I actually needed when I really thought about it. I saw Marcus one more time before I left. We met at a coffee shop to settle the last details of our separation. He brought Stephanie with him, which felt unnecessarily cruel, but I didn't say anything. So you're really moving to France? He asked, stirring his coffee. Lying, yes. I got a teaching position. Teaching what? French. He looked confused. You don't speak French. I smiled. Actually, I do. Fluently. I watched his face as he processed that. The confusion deepening. Since when? Since about 2 years ago. I was taking lessons. Twice a week. I told you I was doing yoga. Why would you learn French? I could have told him the truth. About the surprise. About the plane tickets still sitting in my desk drawer. About the 2 years I'd spent becoming someone better for him while he was planning to leave me. But I didn't, because it wasn't about him anymore. For myself, I said. I learned it for myself. 6 months later, I'm sitting in a cafe in Lyon, grading papers and drinking coffee that's better than anything I ever had in the States. I have an apartment with tall windows that let in the afternoon light. I have students who make me laugh and challenge me and remind me why I love teaching. I have friends who invite me to dinner parties where everyone speaks too fast and I have to concentrate hard to keep up, but I'm keeping up. I went to Paris last month, alone. I walked through the Musée d'Orsay and sat in cafes in the Marais and visited Shakespeare and Company. I stood in front of the Eiffel Tower at sunset, and it was just as beautiful as Marcus always said it would be. But he wasn't there to see it. I was. Sometimes I think about those 2 years, about all the work I put in for a surprise that never happened, about how I became someone new for someone who was planning to leave the entire time. But then I remember what Madame Rousseau told me. The French was for me. The person I became was for me. Marcus didn't deserve the surprise, but I deserve the transformation. I'm teaching a conversation class tomorrow. Advanced students who want to perfect their English. After class, I'm meeting some friends for drinks. This weekend, I might take the train to Annecy. I've heard the lake there is beautiful. My life is in French now. Not because of Marcus. Not because of some plan that fell apart. But because I chose it. Because I worked for it. Because I became someone who could build a life in another language, in another country, in another version of myself. And that's the real surprise. Not the one I planned, but the one I got anyway. If you enjoyed this story, like and subscribe.